Okay. Good morning, I'm Bob Anderson, and our panel this morning is discussing collaborative green innovation. When I first saw that title, I began to wonder whether this thing really fits this audience forum. From my own standpoint, I spent some time in the 60s and 70s working on lead-free gasoline and catalytic converters. I got to know the California Air Resources Board pretty well. But I said, what does this have to do with typical FiRe themes of using IT and communication for significant changes, disruptions, dislocations? Then I began talking to this distinguished panel, and I came to the conclusion that not just this session, but the entire program ought to cover this topic. I walked in here, saw what the rest of the program was, and realized, Mark, you're a step ahead of me, as you always are. So in fact, this is the whole discussion has been about sustainability. These folks will be bringing perspectives on sustainability, corporate strategy, innovation, software tools, and real-world cases that give you an example of what can be done as we solve this geometric problem. A recent New Yorker article profiled Nathan Myhrvold, suggesting that we don't need Thomas Edisons anymore. We've got the hardware, the software, we've got the communication and collaboration tools, and simply stand back, turn the crank, and out the back end come products and invention. So we'll see whether, in fact, our guys can deliver on that. The lead-free gasoline story I mentioned, it took us 30 years to achieve. Took 10 years to get the legislation and the agreement of what to do. Took 10 years to develop the technology, 10 years to get it deployed. We don't have 30 years to solve the problems we're talking about at this meeting. At that time, we didn't have re-engineered work processes. We imported something from the UK called BF and BI, which our British friends will tell you stands for brute force and bloody ignorance. We didn't waste any time with collaboration. It was NIH, not invented here. And we kept customers out of the loop, which made it real easy. We just told them what they wanted. The Fortune this week has a quotation by C.K. Prahalad, whose latest idea is co-creation, which is not just having the customer in the loop, but having the customer actually finish the development of the product for their specific requirements. So we've come a long way since that old way of doing things. These guys tell us that CEOs are concerned about, aware of, and committed to solving some of these problems. Their stakeholders care, their bottom line cares, and it's a tough combination of technology, economics, politics, and so forth. In a world where the energy security, climate change, and water supply are not being effectively addressed by our governments, I'm glad to see that the private sector is stepping up to the plate. Our first panelist is Mark Atkins, Chairman, President, and CEO of Invention Machine Corporation. And Mark, as you travel across national borders and work with lots of different industry groups, what do you see as CEOs' approach now to sustainability? What issues are they wrestling with?
Well, definitely I can echo some of your sentiments in your opening remarks, Bob, and that is that CEOs are definitely committed. Greenwashing is in the rear view mirror right now for CEOs. They've come to realize that commitment is essential for them, and getting their organizations committed is of the utmost importance. So they know the pressures to bear are coming from various factions. They're coming from consumers that they have to serve, they're coming from stakeholders, they're coming from government agencies, amongst several of the many. And so what they've now done is they've realized that, no longer do they have to just pay lip service to the green initiatives, but they have to really evolve into sustainability around green. And so what they've done is they've started to understand it. They've done their homework, they've researched it, and they see that there is a triple bottom line net to them. And that is not only just the planet and how the planet's going to be impacted favorably with these initiatives and sustainability, and their people, obviously, which is a real key element to the CEO charter, are going to basically be more motivated, and they're going to attract bright young people into their companies, but they've seen the profitability element. And so now this is very compatible with their charter. And so what they've done is they've said, let's get after it. Let's get after green, and let's go and get sustainable so that we can produce the green, so to speak, our top line. And that's what they're looking at. And just one last point, if I may. They're addressing it in the form of sustainable innovation. And I'm starting to see that become more and more of a ubiquitous theme.
How does your company help them do that? You talk about breakthrough ideas, accelerated product development. Now you got a willing audience. What is it you do to help them make this happen?
Well, at Invention Machine, we actually take ideation into productization. And so what we have is a software platform that allows these engineering groups that are chartered with product development initiatives to bring ideas into a commercial state. So For example, you have a company like Shell, a petro company that we're all familiar with, and they're operating, as I indicated in one of the mandates, which is the EU has put on a mandate to replace 6% by 2010, in less than 2 years. They have a 6% replacement factor for diesel and petrol. And so what we help them do is take that idea of alternative fuel, and we help them be able to come up with a biofuel from algae. And that's how we're working with companies.
I know lots of barriers to making these kinds of things happen, particularly make them happen quickly. Culture, trust, power, politics, all that kind of stuff. How does your approach address and attack those barriers?
Well, it's all got to come from the top, obviously. The CEO mandate, the C-exec mandate, they have to be able to buy into sustainability, which they are. But nothing will really break down any of those barriers, Bob, like success. And so what we're seeing in sustainable innovation projects that we're working with companies around the world is that they are accomplishing the success. They are coming up with either modifications or total re-engineering of their products in a way that are not only complying with green, but are also making them much more competitive. So the dual metrics that a CEO is being measured on are the old conventional metrics of profitability, but the new metrics that are being imposed upon them of sustainability. So sustainable innovation is what we're seeing and we're bringing about, and that's how it's proliferating within the organizations of manufacturing entity types.
Great. Mark Turrell, CEO of Imaginatik, has a powerful set of software and process tools that allow these kinds of processes to take place. Mark, can you kind of give us a flavor of what the secret is of how you help your clients do the same kind of thing that the other Mark has just told us about?
Well, fine. I'll start off with the secret thing. It's quite interesting that all of looking at collaboration, how do you get people to collaborate? And as I was saying earlier, that this is a problem that's been around for 20 years and we still haven't solved it. It turns out that most of the solutions to this thing are very counterintuitive. And I almost like to ask the audience just a quick question. So as a follow-up to the anonymity question, are anonymous ideas more or less likely to be your best concepts? Who thinks more likely? I can't see any answer. Less likely? Most people think that anonymous ideas will be less likely as a matter of course, because they think that people will be afraid of putting things in their poor quality. But it turns out human beings would use anonymity to share perspective-changing ideas, things that go across company boundaries. The reason why I mention this now is that if we look to really operationalize green initiatives, we need to put in place collaboration tools to roll out programs across very large numbers of companies and across their entire value chain. We're cooperating, for example, with the World Economic Forum on a sustainability in consumer and retail. So in fact, I'm meant to be in Seattle right now on a project to do exactly this. And what they found is that the CEOs have gone very quickly from the need to implement sustainability programs to the need to operationalize it. What they found very quickly is that this is a completely systemic and holistic problem. Right now in product development, there's a view that 65% of all product development will be driven by sustainability issues within the next 12 months. And this is because if you require packaging, if you require logistics, everything else, these things are having impact. And just as another thought on this, another reason why green is actually fundamentally different in the United States from it is in Europe. In Europe, there's this whole perception of need that green is good, and we should be good to the planet, and we shouldn't be mean to it. Over here, green is green, which means you need to make money. And if there's no money in it, I think what's actually been quite fascinating is just looking at that there is no incompatibility at all that green for green, you can still save the planet. And if I give just one little example about how my company helps, we had Walmart and IBM presenting a case study at our user group conference that we held in April of this year about how Walmart wanted to collect sustainability ideas to reduce energy consumption in their stores in North America. The old way of doing this type of ideation was that they would do focus groups, ask employees in a suggestion box method, and over 3 years they only had one idea that got implemented out of the old-fashioned way of doing it, and that was an idea from an associate called Darryl, who decided to take the light bulbs out of the back of vending machines in the staff canteen. That was it. How much money did that make? That made $4 million net over the last 3 years. But the old-fashioned ways, these old-fashioned processes that we've been following only yielded one real idea over the space of 3 years. We did a project jointly with IBM that Walmart presented. Over the space of 5 days, they had 4,500 associates across all of their North American stores, representatives, going in usually after office hours. And for no money whatsoever, they submitted 3,000 ideas or concepts into 5 distinct areas. And right now, the Walmart presented that they'd already netted within about 6 weeks $38 million of net cost savings by reducing an energy. And this was the easy stuff. So right now, really, there's this whole pressure to operationalize it. My company operationalizes it, and there was just a nice little example for you.
One of the concerns I have as I see some of the layoffs and the mergers and acquisitions and people getting cut out and so forth is the amount of talent that walks out the door. Do your tools have anything that allows us to capture that experience, that knowledge? I mean, you mentioned, a factory worker or a shop worker, store worker generating these $1 million ideas. What's happening these days to capture the wisdom that's in the people that have been there for a long period of time?
Well, I mean, I think at the moment we're in a transition period, and hopefully myself and my marketing team will do a good job at, like all these technology providers will do a good job at getting the word out there. Because right now at the moment, most companies are relying on email, which means that when you leave the company, your inbox gets destroyed and you never hand it over to the next person. So at the moment, there is almost a sort of systematic destruction or sort of ignorance of the knowledge that's already there. I think with companies beginning to adopt much more enlightened tools and actually getting people to use it, with things like search engines where knowledge pops up sort of as and when you need it, and our company does that. You type in an idea and it's immediately popping up similar concepts. I think as these tools get adopted, more and more of the knowledge stays in. Now, what that means for the people that get downsized, it becomes a lot easier to replace people, because now you no longer need the person because you've got some of their brain power. I think also one of the things that we're looking at is companies beginning to use that extended brain power of their alumni network or their retirees. Just because you've left and you've got brain power, right now we're actually seeing companies beginning to bring their retirees back in. And so our company would also help sort of systems like that reach outside to get the sort of the older gray cells.
Great idea. I'd like to hear now from some of our operating company people. Dr. Prith Banerjee was formerly Dean of Engineering at University of Illinois. He's now gone over to the other side to serve as Senior Vice President of Hewlett-Packard and Director of their laboratories. Prith, does this consultant talk square with the way you guys look at the sustainability issue in a large company, technologically oriented such as HP?
Absolutely. Sustainability is truly a global challenge. It impacts the environment, it impacts society, and HP takes this role and challenge very seriously. So if you look at the area of sustainability and how an IT company, or the large IT companies in the world can contribute to that, the amount of greenhouse gases that IT companies directly contribute to is about 2%. We need to come up with solutions to how we reduce the energy costs and the greenhouse gas emissions within that 2% area. And there are lots of efforts in place within HP to address that topic. The other 98% is the energy and consumed and the impact that people have in how we are consuming resources. And IT companies can actually provide solutions to reduce the energy consumptions in other areas, such as transportation, making things more efficient, such as dematerialization of processes. So HP as an IT company is essentially asking all other IT companies to form a partnership in what we call is a sustainable IT ecosystem that will, so that we'll work collaboratively on solving some of these problems. I represent HP Labs, which is the central research arm of HP. HP overall has an R&D budget of about $3.6 billion, and HP Labs tries to contribute to the future directions of HP. HP Lab just went through a very interesting strategic planning exercise. We figured out, among lots of ideas among researchers, what we should be working on. And we created 5 big themes that labs will be working on. And one of those themes is sustainability. So our labs researchers are developing concepts from green nano, using nanotechnology to advance the green agenda, how to reduce energy in large data centers and replacing copper with photonic interconnects to reduce energy, developing tools and processes to reduce the overall carbon footprint of entire systems from cradle to cradle. So sustainability is a big deal at HP.
What are the drivers? What causes your CEO to care about sustainability? What pressures is he under?
I think, as was just mentioned by Mark, but actually both Marks, that sustainability is just not a social thing that we are doing. I think we have demonstrated within HP, within the limited constraints of the IT, that it allows customers to save energy, reduce the carbon footprint, and save money. Let me give you an example. So HP Labs created a technology called dynamic smart cooling, which put a lot of sensors in these large data centers. Large data centers consume hundreds of megawatts of power in these data centers from Google and Yahoo and so on, and Amazon. It turns out that 60% of the energy consumed in these data centers is due to power and cooling. So what our labs researchers came up with is some technologies by smartly putting sensors and based on that, adjusting the cooling, reduce the overall energy consumption by 40%. Now you just do the math. There are data centers that HP runs in Bangalore, for example, that reduces costs by $1 million per year. So that's a powerful enough thing for our CEO. HP just today, if you have seen the San Francisco Chronicle, we just announced our sustainability initiative in our printing business, how we'll have sustainable inkjet printers and supplies and paper and so on and so forth. So it is a big deal from a business perspective.
Right. You've been a personal success in the academic arena and as an entrepreneur where you have some freedom to do some things in an open fashion, and you're a well-known proponent of open innovation. How does that play in a big company?
Actually, so I was mentioning the HP Lab strategic plan, and there are three pillars in our new strategy. And a strategy of high-impact research, of technology transfer, and the third pillar is that of open innovation. By that, what we recognize is not all the smart people work for HP and HP Labs. The problem of sustainability is such an important challenge that we cannot solve it ourselves. So our open innovation strategy is we are essentially letting the world out there know these are our 5 big themes that we are investing in. Within those themes, these are the 23 labs we have created. We are partnering with universities and VCs and startup companies and leveraging these relationships to amplify what we do. So open innovation is now a big deal for HP and HP Labs. And actually, we are using some of the technologies that were just mentioned by Mark and Mark. And I'm actually looking forward to using your tools.
Very good. You're already a customer of ours.
That's right.
Very good. Our final panelist is Steve Biase from JohnsonDiversey. This is a standalone company which has DNA in its genes from parents of Johnson Wax and Unilever. Steve is Senior Vice President, Chief Scientific Officer, responsibility for research, development, and engineering. Your company provides green cleaning systems to a number of diverse customers. First time I looked at that, that's pretty straightforward. A bucket of water, a mop, and what else do you do? But they've built a $3 billion company doing that kind of activity. So can you give us a flavor of how innovation affects something which looks mundane and on the reality is a really complex opportunity?
Thank you, Bob. As we think about sustainability at JohnsonDiversey, there are really 2 main elements. The first is corporate commitment from the top, and that our company has a legacy of being sustainable. S.C. Johnson, Sam Johnson removed fluorocarbons from aerosols in 1975, and we have evidence of corporate commitment that goes back to 1935, and the family are staunch environmentalists. And the second key element is the use of knowledge to solve these problems. They're enormously complex, and we have to use knowledge across the industry to do this in a collaborative method. When we speak about green cleaning, we think about it in many dimensions, and the first is it's industry transforming. It's going to change everything we do. And when you think about cleaning, you use water to clean, and water is a key element of sustainability. And when JohnsonDiversey views sustainability, it's about saving lives through infection prevention and food safety as 2 elements of our program. And earlier we heard a speaker talk about epidemics. We're at the front end of that, trying to prevent it from happening through good cleaning and hygiene methods. And so that's all about being sustainable. Finally, you have to look at sustainability from a carbon footprint point of view. We're trying to reduce the carbon footprint of our company and our customers, so it has to be holistic. And ultimately, you have to make money. If you can't be profitable, then sustainability doesn't make sense. A future issue for us is looking at sustainability in a meaningful way, in a holistic way, with standards that truly are transformational and sustainable versus incremental and self-serving. One of the great rushes to sustainability is setting standards that aren't holistic or meaningful and actually a distraction. So we're trying to manage that.
Very good. When we were chatting about the content of this conference, you raised some issues about some of the cultural and language barriers that have to be engaged now that we become open and collaborate and so forth. But you mentioned that some of these things happen inside the United States as well as globally. Can you share with us some of those barriers that you've had to wrestle with as you've implemented some of your solutions?
Yeah, sustainability for us is a global initiative, and we're a global company. We operate in 160 countries, and we have 12,000 employees. And communicating the strategy and actioning it around the world is a challenge for us. We first begin by translating the strategy from English into 22 different languages. And you often find that some things are lost in translation, especially at the cultural level. So what we say and how we behave and what we mean have to be carefully worked. And it really becomes a leadership issue. It starts at the top. We travel a lot. We visit a lot of our sites. We talk the strategy on a local level and help our employees action that strategy around sustainability in a way that makes sense at the local level. And key to that as a future view is how do we use IT or technology to better communicate and action without doing it by brute force. And that's a future activity for us.
We also discussed some ideas that you've shared with one of your clients on water savings that was not particularly related to the cleanup business, but your soft drink application I found pretty interesting.
Yeah, water is an element of cleaning. In fact, it's a critical solvent. You can't clean without water. And there's the old saying, water, water everywhere, but not a drop to drink. And 75% of the planet's covered by water, but that's not the issue. The issue is how much of it is available, clean, fresh, and usable. And if you've ever visited a beverage plant, there's water everywhere. And it's used and abandoned, and that's becoming a large issue at the CEO suite of beverage companies and our customers. And last year, we helped our customers save 1 billion gallons of water, and that was just with 21 customers, by auditing their water use to begin with, finding the leaks, fixing the losses of water, and then we helped them develop an operating plan around using water more efficiently, and then introducing technologies which use water in cleaning more effectively so that there's less water to be consumed. And water is infinitely recyclable. And one program we're working on is taking a facility like this hotel and recycling 95% of the water that comes in so that it never has to leave. And that would be an enormous advantage on water reuse. We can do the same thing on energy efficiency. So water is becoming a very, very big deal in our business.
Okay, well, we've heard of some good solutions and we've heard of some applications that are actually having some impact. Mark, so what's the challenge here? I mean, it seems like you guys have the answers, they got the problems. What are the barriers?
Well, there's a perfect storm, Bob, that's forming out there, and it's not exactly a perfect situation for a lot of the companies. CEO dilemma, as a Boston Consultancy Group has undertaken and found out, is one that has a real two-pronged problem. On the one hand, as we all know what green is doing to shorten the product development cycles and put products into market that are in compliance quicker, what is happening is that these companies are realizing that up to 70% of their current product line are going to become obsolete within 3 years and possibly at best in 5 years. So think about that. 70% of your current revenue drivers are going to be going into sunset. In addition to that, the other factor that comes into play is that there's a brain drain. So for the most part, what you're looking at is that the baby boomers are exiting, as we heard Mark talk about, and where do we capture the knowledge? But not only is it just a knowledge situation, where do we get the capacity? Because the reinforcements that are coming up in the younger generation aren't quite as many to fill the capacity gap. So overall, sustainable innovation initiatives are becoming really more and more the mantra. And what CEOs are looking at and companies are looking at is in order to accomplish sustainable innovation, they need to look for other solutions. They need to look for automation. They need to look at ways in which to produce more ideation into productization. So those are the challenges that are coming about. And we're seeing that with many of the hundreds of companies that we're working with globally, and we're helping them bring it about.
Mark, did you have a comment on that?
Actually, there aren't any problems with this. This stuff is actually really, really very easy. You've got commitment from the top. People are focused on it. People make money. I think the only real challenge that we have is just understanding really the speed that we have to do what we know is right and we're doing anyway. And the real issue is that if you look at, there are 1.5 billion people that don't have electricity. If China, if these sort of lesser developed countries begin to industrialize to become like America, you're looking at 7 more planets are needed to have the same level of Californian consumption. So the issue that we have is we just have to do this stuff really, really fast. But there are no problems. The solutions exist. We're all doing it. We've got budget. We're making money. This is actually really easy. As global challenges go, this really isn't going to be that hard.
Okay. Well, on that optimistic note, let me open it up to questions from the floor. Please identify yourself and your affiliation and direct your question at any of the panelists. Have the lights up, please.
We covered all their problems. And all the
See, I said there were no problems.
Good
Easy.
job.
I thought the audience was smarter than
Okay,
this.
well,
Actually.
let me ask one then. Shareholders. Are shareholders looking beyond dividends and earnings growth and share price growth here? Do shareholders care?
I think shareholders care. I think shareholders do care about the fact that sustainability is an environmental issue, it is a societal issue, and we just cannot become a society that just keeps on consuming. So there's one point I would like to add to what I talked about. So some of the solutions that we have worked at in the area of sustainability are essentially the tip of the iceberg, how to reduce energy in data centers and so on. But we within HP are looking at the total cost of energy and resource consumed from what we call a cradle-to-cradle approach. So when you are building, you are building a laptop or building a printer or whatever, what's the, starting from the materials cost, from the extraction from Earth, to the actual making of the gadgets, the actual operations of the gadgets, and then recycling it back. So we are trying to create a metric, and the currency is no longer going to be dollars or yuan or rupees or pounds. It'll be the currency will be joules. So every component that you build will have an associated kind of a carbon footprint and energy footprint. And that's going to be very interesting. And I think shareholders, if the average consumer can just look at a product and say, this from inception to recycling, this has consumed 300 joules, and this product from HP consumes 300 joules, this product from some other consumes 900 joules, I think customers will care, and therefore shareholders will care.
Good. Steve, I'm curious, where you folks practice is pretty much at the interface of government involvement from the standpoint of food safety and water safety and so forth. Is the government becoming part of the solution here, or is it still one of the barriers?
Well, I think sustainability is starting to become a burning platform for industries like ours and others, as well as the government. And I believe there has to be a collaboration. The government has a role in regulation, setting standards, and helping implement and drive sustainable solutions. But ultimately, the market will dictate how those stick and how fast they move. To the shareholder question, I think many investors, I just read a statistic about investors who invest in companies that are committed to sustainability made more money in the last few years than those that did not. And ultimately, it comes down to becoming more efficient, which drives profits, and becoming more effective, which drives the future of the organization. And the government has a key role and vested interest in both, because ultimately it has to serve the people in the country or people in the world. And the beauty of sustainability for us and our company is that it's a good thing to do. It enriches people's lives, and we can make money at it.
We heard an interesting benchmark on the medical industry this morning from the previous speaker. I'm just curious if any of you can point to a particular country. If the Indian healthcare system is beating us 5-1, is there somebody that's out there that's beating us in the sustainability race by a similar margin?
Oh, I do. I think that what we're starting to see is in Asia, these folks are really starting to take a real charter of sustainability. But in Europe, to the point that Mark said, they are ahead of us as well, and green is important. But to the shareholders in general, whether it's green mutual funds or anything, they have a two-pronged objective. They want to see the reduction by the company of carbon debt, and they also want to see the reduction of debt on the balance sheet, which is driven by innovative processes and sustainability. So sustainable innovation is key.
I thank our speakers. We finished precisely at 30.00 minutes as we announced that we would. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you.
Thank you.